Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Welcome, everyone, to the Anderson Law Power Hour podcast with attorney Tim Anderson here. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely those of the author and guest. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Also, there is no attorney-client privilege. Feel free to ask questions or comment on Facebook. Legal consultation service will be determined at the time of your appointment. Anderson Law is a firm located at 2492 North Landing Road here in Virginia Beach, Suite 104. Online, virginialawoffice.com, virginialawoffice.com. Or, of course, if you feel free to call the office, 757-800-1000. Good to see you in your office, sir.
Here we go. So the Anderson Law Power Hour has evolved to a podcast. Within the past 7 days, Mark, we've had over 100,000 people hitting our Facebook page.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Great.
So our videos have produced 20, 30,000 views. So we're talking about guns.
Right.
It's a big subject. The Democrats just took over in Richmond last Tuesday, 1 week ago today. So we're going to spend some time breaking down certain things.
That's good. Hot topic today.
Red flag laws.
Red flag laws, definitely.
Red flag laws. So let me tell everybody first about the Facebook thing. So I have here on my phone, see your comments as you are moving forward, and I will try to address them through the show. However, I really want to cover the content, and I may have to get to your comments after the show is over. So please just bear with us. We have a lot of ground to cover. I'm what you're saying, and if I see something that I can address inside of our content, I will position that, and we'll go from there. All right. So, red flag laws are coming. It's not an if, it's a guarantee. It's a guarantee, and we know this because Governor Northam has said it is a top priority for 2020. Yeah. It's going to happen. So, I'm not sitting here saying being a cheerleader for red flag laws. I'm simply saying this is now. It's our job to talk about what it is, what you can expect, how this is going to go. Now,
2020 right around the corner. The next session is January 8th.
Yep, that's right. It's right there.
Yeah. So
we don't know exactly what the Democrats have up their sleeve for red flag laws, but we do know this. After the shooting in Virginia Beach, which literally occurred directly across the street here, Governor Northam called a special session, okay? And it was just to deal with guns. And during the special session, lots of delegates and senators came up with various bills to look at whether or not we're what we can do to kind of change things. And all kinds of bills came forward in the legislature. But one of the bills, and the one we're going to spend time talking about today, is Bill 1763. This is a House bill that came forward during the session, and this one deals specifically with the red flag laws. Sorry, I'm still trying to get this Facebook feed to work on my side. So 1763.
Yeah.
Now 1763 is what they proposed during the session. It may be more, it may be less, it could be something totally different, but we're going to use 1763 as kind of a backstop to what we can anticipate is going to pass in the session next year. So first off, I know you've done your research, but basically a red flag law is if you're in distress, mental distress, possibly going to hurt somebody or hurt yourself, then the idea is that a petitioner can go to a court, petition to have your guns taken away, and the police can come in and take your guns away. Is that how you understand it?
That's exactly right. It doesn't necessarily have to be a relative either. It doesn't have to be in your home. It could be a neighbor.
Right.
Or maybe possibly, as we may have used it as a reference, the Virginia Beach shooting. That could have been implemented.
Yeah, one of the co-workers could have possibly requested. And in fact, I think one of the people who died in Virginia Beach specifically had said a couple, maybe to her husband or something, that she felt like this guy was going to come and kill them. And sure enough, she was prophetic in her words. And so what the red flag laws are designed for is for somebody who feels either threatened or somebody who is worried about somebody else that they're going to cause harm to themselves. There's lots of good intention in the law, but there's lots of bad consequences that are going to come of that, and we're going to talk about that. So let's break down 1763. First, you have to have a police officer or a prosecutor petition the court to do this. So it's not going to be just you or me walking into a court. It's going to have to be something that's brought to the law enforcement level, and then the law enforcement is going to act somewhat as a gatekeeper to determine whether there's cause. So if I have a complaint about John, I won't be able to go get the red flag rule against John. I'll have to go to the police, tell the police my concerns, and then the police will have to decide if they want to petition a court. Then it'll be up to a judge or a magistrate to determine whether to issue that. Now, if the judge issues that, then what's going to happen under 1763, and again, we're not saying 1763 is law here, okay? We are saying this is what a proposed bill, so it's going to probably look something like this, but under 1763, what would happen is the police would come in, they're going to take all your guns out of your house, and then you're going to have a hearing within 14 days in front of a circuit court judge. And in those 14 days, the judge then will determine whether or not grounds exist to issue basically a gun restraining order for up to 180 days. Okay.
Yes.
So that's what's on the table. Now, again, Facebook, I know you're going to blast me and you're going to throw all your comments on here about what you think should happen and what you shouldn't think should happen and how this is wrong or right. I'm not weighing in on that. I'm telling you what is coming down the pipe. Okay. We're saying, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is what you should expect.
Yeah. May I interject, sir? I think some folks are probably saying, well, what's the difference between that and a, if I could say, regular protective order? Living with your lover, whomever, and they have threatened you and so forth. We know they have guns in the house.
Right.
Would that extreme risk protection order be in effect there? Would I be able to just issue what the magistrate might say is a regular protective order?
Right.
Would they be one and the same?
Such a great question, and it totally segues into, Mark and I have been doing this for a while, and he can just totally segue the right section. So here's the deal. Without red flag laws, all right, there are a lot of opportunities under the law for me to have guns removed from somebody's property. All right. The first one is that in a marital situation, you can get a protective order, a standard protective order. Now, what a standard protective order would basically be is a spouse says, hey, my spouse is acting dangerously or threatening towards me, and I need protection from my spouse. All right. And and that procedure already exists, and this can be between non-spouses as well, but it's most commonly between spouses. And so if I'm afraid of my spouse, and the magistrate agrees with me and issues a protective order, then not only does that person have to leave the property and leave, be away from me, but they're prohibited by law from owning or possessing a firearm. Okay, so that exists already. So protective orders are already there. The other thing that exists in the law is something called an emergency detention order. And what an emergency detention order is if you are acting suicidal or homicidal, a family member or a mental health worker or a police officer or somebody can go to the magistrate and say, you are acting in a dangerous way, and you're unable to care for yourself, you're acting suicidal, you're acting homicidal. And by doing that, you would then be committed to behavioral social services and committed to a mental hospital. Now, you'd be committed to that mental hospital for 3 days. So obviously during those 3 days, you would not have any guns in the mental hospital. And then a magistrate judge called a special justice would come in and decide whether you should stay in the hospital for a longer period of time. If the magistrate feels like you should not, you get to go home and your gun rights are unaffected. And if he feels like you should stay in because you are in a bad spot, then your gun rights are taken away for life. Okay. So that already exists. So we have protective orders. We have emergency detention orders for mental health, And then the third way is that if you are threatening me, I can go down and take a criminal charge out for that.
That's correct.
If I take a criminal charge out for that, the magistrate can say, arrest this individual, and when you arrest them, I'm going to make it a special condition that you can't have a bomb, you can't have a gun. The magistrate can decide if he wants to do that. So already, before we have any red flag laws in Virginia, there are 3 very clear ways where somebody could lose their rights to own and possess a firearm. And they're all geared mostly towards mental health.
Yes.
And they're all geared towards people that are complaining. So really, what's the purpose of a red flag law, an emergency protective order for guns? And here is the big thing. With all the other 3 things, you have done something to warrant the system to get involved. I've threatened you. I have tried to kill myself. I have pointed a gun at my spouse and they get a protective order for that. I have done something and reactive to me doing something, I lose my gun rights.
Right.
Okay. Now with an emergency protective order, it's different. In an emergency red flag order, you have not done anything. Okay.
Okay.
You've not threatened anybody. You've not tried to kill yourself. This is just somebody saying, hey, this person is acting dangerous, but they haven't committed a crime. They haven't done something. So the police can come in before you've done something and take your guns from you without charging you with a crime, without charging you with anything else. They can literally just come in and take your firearms. And that's the difference, okay, between what a red flag law is and what currently exists under the law. Okay. Now, it may initially sound like that is, a good thing. Because I think honestly, everybody probably agrees this. I don't think anybody can disagree with this. The reason why the people are committing these gun crimes is there is a mental health component to this.
Yeah,
I mean, nobody in their just rational right mind is going to go shoot up a school or shoot up a government building. There's some kind of a mental health thing here. So so it has a inherently good intention, but here's how it's abused. Okay. Let's say that you and I are neighbors and I just don't like you, right? And I know you have guns and I just want to go down and say, hey, I saw, you in the backyard pointing a gun at your head, okay? And I'm really worried about him because he pointed a gun at his head. Then the police are going to come in and take your guns from you without you even being able to have a say in, hey, I didn't do that. There's no investigation. There's no due process. This is just somebody saying something about you. And that makes it a huge risk of, people losing their rights, losing a constitutional right, having, the police forcefully come into their house and remove weapons. Without there being any way for the respondent to stop that from happening, because it will happen, and then you have to get them back, through the court process. And some the naysayers will say, well, that's only for 2 weeks. That person can live without it for 2 weeks. Well, I mean, that's fine, but what if 7 days into an emergency protective order, there's a home intruder and kill the person?
Yeah. Let me back up for a second. In the instance, the example you gave of someone who's acting dangerously, and dare I say, well, maybe they're just crazy, not crazy, that's the wrong choice. Maybe they're just acting out, not intentional. Maybe it's just their personality quirk, whatever. Okay, so the police come and confiscate their guns. There's the hearing. The magistrate says, okay, there's the next process of you being psychologically evaluated, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's a term of 7 days, you said?
Well, it's a 14 days.
14 days?
14 days before you see a judge.
14 days before you see a judge.
And then from there, the judge decides, I guess, if you're going to be evaluated or whether he's going to issue some type of a term up to 6 months.
Okay. Now, I know in previous shows we've talked about those types of acts which could be construed and perceived that you are danger, so we're going to take away your gun rights for the rest of your life.
Right.
Would that would have to be determined by a hearing?
That would not happen under the red flag rules.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so where that would happen would be in a mental health commitment situation, or that would happen in a situation maybe involving if you were convicted of a domestic violence case. So the red flag laws will not deprive somebody for life of it. But the real difference here is generally you lose a right when you've done something.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And now they're saying you're going to lose the right because somebody thinks you may do something. That's a big difference.
There's a difference. Yeah.
That's a big standard.
No due process at all.
No due process.
It's gone.
The due process comes on the backside of it, where the backside says, well, should we have done this? Should we have taken this away? Or even if we should have taken this away, should we extend it any further past the 14 days? The due process comes after the rights have been taken away. And that's not how due process is supposed to work.
Right.
Due process is supposed to work before you face the punishment. The punishment in this case is you lose your Second Amendment rights. You lose your guns. Now, this bill says, hey, if we come in and we seize your guns, they'll be held in the police department and they can be released to a family member or a responsible person over 21, or we'll give them back if down the road, this person no longer should have this extension done. So it's not necessarily the taking of the property for life, it's the taking of the property temporarily.
Okay.
So that's it. Now, this is not a new concept. There's 16 states and the District of Columbia that have these in place. There's a really good example about a story of a guy up in Vermont. And essentially what he did, they have this law up there. Now Vermont is very gun friendly, very pro-gun. Yes. But the governor signed in this red flag law last year because, and in his own words in Vermont, he's like, hey, we've got to do something. We've got to identify. We've got to do something. We've got to stop these mass shootings in El Paso. Yeah. We've got to stop these mass shootings in Las Vegas. Well, there's this. So these are in there, and so in Vermont, this guy gets a DUI, and he gets very despondent, and a few months later, and he's in a bad spot psychologically, and he goes out in the woods and he starts shooting his gun, right? And so the police come in and they do this emergency protective order. And in that emergency protective order, they are able to seize this guy's guns because he was out there, shooting his gun, acting crazy, saying that he wanted to die by cop, called suicide by cop. You start shooting a gun, you want the cops to shoot at you, and we go from there. Kyle, that is an excellent question. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Kyle asked what's going to be the recourse for people who are falsely charged with.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate that.
Kyle, we're going to get right into that. I promise. Just stand by. Thanks for that question. That question just popped up right here on my phone. So in that kind of a situation, the red flag laws worked to disarm this guy, but he had done something. He had gone out, he had started shooting a gun, he had started acting crazy, he got the police involved. This is, so everybody may say, yeah, that guy was in a bad spot. This is a great example of red flag laws working like they're intended to. But it's really not, because that would have happened to this guy anyway. This guy would have been arrested for discharging a firearm. The criminal justice system would have bared down on him, and he would have lost his gun rights. That would have happened automatically. What if this guy that I just told you about in Vermont just said to a friend on the phone, hey, I think I'm going to go out and shoot in the woods and try to get the cops to act on this? What if he said that, right?
Just said it.
Yeah. And then his friend goes and tells the cops, and the cops go get a red flag law order, and then they take the guy's guns just because he said it. And maybe after he said it, maybe he was drunk when he said it. Maybe what he meant when he said it is not what he meant 2 hours later upon self-reflection. What we're doing is we are allowing the government to take your right before you've committed the act. You've just had a thought of doing something, or somebody could make a completely false statement.
Gotcha. If I can add a historical perspective to it for our listeners and viewers, as I was researching, it was initiated in Connecticut in 1999 when an individual went into his office, which we hear often so many times, and it was a lottery office. Beck, I think it was the name of Beck, shot his supervisors, and everyone said he was acting normal. He was happy. He had a few days of medical leave and so forth. I think it was required, but no one knew what he was going to do. He pulled his gun from his locker, went in and shot people in his office, then eventually committed suicide. So that's a historical perspective. But how true is the history of that? Because we are still dealing with the mental health component. Yeah. There is no way for us to know, other than, well, in this instance, maybe so, but there's no way for us to know the individual here in Virginia Beach. There's no way for us to know, right? So it has to be brought to the attention somewhere along the line that maybe a mental health professional should be a part of that process and engage the individual and then the police department. Am I kind of going around?
I think when you're talking about due process, I mean, it's a tough line. I mean, it is a tough line because, and again, don't blast me, Facebook. I'm not trying to pick sides here. I'm just trying to lay it out of where the issues are. But let's just say that there's a guy who is hoarding weapons.
That's right. Yeah,
and he's
that
hoarding ammunition. Yeah. And he's making statements that, I'm going to eventually go shoot up the mall. Okay. He's making statements to his friends. Okay. Now, he hasn't committed any crimes yet, right? He's just buying weapons. He's buying ammunition, all legal to do. And he's telling his friends and family and coworkers that, he's stockpiling to go out and shoot up the mall. So currently, what can the police do to this guy? And the answer is really not much. I mean, because he hasn't committed a crime yet. Now, they can put a plainclothes detective on his house and follow him around everywhere, everywhere he goes. And, the moment he goes in the mall and pulls out a gun, they can be on him. But, honestly, the police don't have the resources to do that.
May I interject again? You're much more keen on this, but with the police officer be able to say, okay, that's utterance.
Maybe if he actually, armed himself with, body armor and guns, and, the police could, in him at some point, maybe there could be some kind of a, hey, there's something going on here.
Okay.
Maybe they could charge him with, at least get him mentally evaluated at that point. But until that individual creates an overt act, how can the law engage him unless that there's a mental health allegation, right? And so if the guy's posting on Facebook, hey, I'm going to go shoot up a school, I'm going to go shoot up the mall, that would probably give any magistrate the authority to issue an emergency detention order that would allow him to be committed to a psychiatric hospital for evaluation. So if you post something on Facebook right now and you say, hey, I'm going to go shoot up a building or my coworkers or a school or something like that, that post alone would be enough probable cause for a magistrate to commit you, okay? But if you don't make the statement to somebody, if you're just hoarding the ammunition and you're just hoarding the arms, and what can the police do currently? There would be nothing they could do, And then of course, if the guy goes and shoots up a building, then the public's going to demand, why didn't the police do something about it, right? And so that is why the Democrats believe that red flag laws are going to intercept that kind of a situation. Okay, so let's talk about whether the end justifies the means, right? Because that's the outcome here. Google the Vermont case I was just telling you about and read the story and read something, some of the things about what the prosecutors up there are saying. But pretty much everywhere nationwide, nobody really believes, nobody believes that emergency protective orders are going to stop mass shootings.
That's correct.
Okay? Nobody believes that. No Democrat watching this video in Richmond who's about to pass these laws truly believes that if you pass red flag laws, you're going to stop somebody from shooting up a school. Okay? But where will probably, bring some value, involves individuals. Like, I'm going to kill my spouse, or I'm going to kill myself. These kinds of like close domestic situations where where a spouse can come in and say, hey, I know this, I know this person and he's not acting appropriately, and I think he's going to harm me. I think this is going to be, a situation where I'm going to have harm. It's going to benefit those types of situations. So first off, let's just be honest with what the red flag laws really are. Is they are doing they're involved mostly for individuals, right? They're involved me trying to stop myself from killing myself, me trying to stop myself from killing a family member, me trying to stop myself from killing my neighbor or something like that, right? There's no law that you're going to be able to pass that's going to stop somebody from committing mass murder.
Correct.
Right? I mean, there's just nothing. These people are, they are very quiet. They're under the radar.
That's right.
They're not blasting it on Facebook. They're not talking about it. They just pop up one day and they're committing mass murder. And so red flag laws are not going to change the mass shootings. They're not gonna do that. But will they interfere with the domestic side of things? Possibly. Okay, there could possibly be some benefits to that. The issue, though, is do we already have those tools in place?
Already on the books, as the saying goes.
Without having to deprive somebody of their constitutional rights. And again, the tools that we have is the spouse can get the protective order, which deprives them of their right to own a firearm. The spouse can take out a criminal charge if she feels like the husband or is committing some kind of aggressive crime against them. Or the spouse can have the person committed to a mental hospital. These things already exist.
Yes.
And the nice thing about those options is that there is due process, for those things to happen. Putting you into a mental hospital for a couple of days does not take away your Second Amendment rights. And now, if the judge finds that you should be in there, it does. But it doesn't take away your second. You don't have the police come kick down your door and take all your firearms. And when you are, when the police come and they're dealing with that and they get you into a mental hospital and you're talking to a mental health professional and the mental health professional sees right through what happened because he knows that this is a bunch of baloney, he can discharge them. He can be like, look, this person does not meet the criteria for involuntary commitment.
Gotcha. Yes. Okay.
So you get the mental health people in there, and it could be a very quick turnaround. With them not having you even locked up for the 3 days, right? And so these red flag laws, although there's good intention in why people would want them, it can be very much abused.
Yeah. I think the perception and the fear is for those who are in support of it, and I've seen different articles that some Democrats and some Republicans are in favor of it. I think those who are touting this expect that it's going to stop these types of mass murderers, and in fact, you said it's not going to be there. And I remember reading one brief study that said that they have had nominal effect on these types of, if I say, spontaneous mass murders. Minimal effect rather.
Right. Yeah. There's no way to, there's no way to know because you're depriving somebody of their right to own and possess a firearm before they commit the crime. And so what if I was stockpiling guns because I did want to shoot up a workplace or, a school or something like that, and I just changed my mind. I could change my mind and I haven't committed the crime. I think there was a movie that Tom Cruise was in. It was called Minority Report. Do you remember that movie?
Vaguely.
Yeah. So basically, there were these two people, these like alien people that could see into the future by like 48 hours, and they could see if you were going to commit a crime. And if they knew you were going to commit a crime, they would tell the police everything, and then the police would show up right at the moment when you're about to stab the person, and then they would apprehend you, right?
All right.
And they'd arrest you for a future crime. We don't have that technology, right? So when you're talking about the Second Amendment, right, we're not talking about like, you know, some other amendment. We're talking about the Second Amendment, your right to own and possess a firearm. For that being taken away with no due process, off of the simple allegation of someone else who may or may not have nefarious intent, is alarming. It's alarming, and we have to call it what it is. Now, despite the fact that it's alarming, it's going to be the law. It's going to be the law this time next year. We're going to have them in place, and so how do you fight back, Kyle? Still, how do you fight back when these when you get served with a red flag law? Well, first off, there's nothing you're going to be able to do to stop the police from confiscating your firearms. Okay, if an order is issued and the police are at your door, you will have no opportunity to stop them from confiscating your firearms. All you can do is comply. All right. If you fail to comply, the police can use lethal force. I mean, they can, you know, if you are acting erratic and try to go for your guns, that you could get shot and killed. They can arrest you. They can detain you. They can put you in handcuffs and search your house. You know, so you will not be able to stop that from happening. When the police come in and confiscate your firearms, your fight is with the courts, and that will be within 14 days of when that confiscation occurs. So, and again, this is assuming that the law follows 1763, which I highly suspect we're going to see that. Once that happens, you will have to go to court. You will have to convince a judge, because now you're guilty until proven innocent. You will have to convince a judge you're not at a level of, you know, that what was alleged, and then if the judge is convinced, the order will expire and not be continued. And if the order is not convinced, it will be extended for up to 6 months. Now, at the end of the 6 months, you can get your firearms back, you know, assuming there's not something else that's happened in the meantime. Or in that term of that 6 months, a family member can petition to have the firearms transferred to them, or a friend or something like that. But you will not be allowed to have a firearm. If you have a protective order, one of these gun protective orders in place, and somebody gives you a gun, the person that gives you the gun can be charged with a felony. So now there's going to be implications upon somebody that may enable the person to get a firearm, that person can be charged with a felony.
That's right,
and so this is what is coming. This is what the law is going to be, and there is absolutely nothing that is going to be able to stop that from happening. The courts across the country have not found these laws to be constitutionally in violation of the Second Amendment. All right, because what the courts are saying is that it is the due process is not taking the guns over the 14 days. That's not the due process. The due process is that from that 14-day mark to the 6-month mark, you have a right to have a hearing as to whether you should get the guns back before that time. So the courts are basically saying due process doesn't start until the 14-day mark, until you can see a judge. So the 14 days where they are temporarily taken out, their courts are not saying that's a due process violation. So don't expect that the courts are going to come in and save us on this one. You know, I did this story yesterday about the Supreme Court could possibly come in and deal with the AR-15 things, and really hopeful and optimistic that they will. We're not going to see the courts. We're not going to see a federal injunction. It's been tried and failed in every jurisdiction. I have not been able to find any meaningful court that has enjoined a red flag law that models something close to what 1763 is. Now, of course, if the Democrats go completely hog wild crazy and they put something ridiculous in there, we might be able to see the courts back down. But as 1763 is written, it's very much close to what the Connecticut one is and the California one. And the courts are not going, have not, at least not. I'm not going to say they're not going to. Not my place to say what the courts will or won't do. But historically, nobody has interfered with those laws.
I got you. I was thinking the average Mark, average Tim, average Joe, law-abiding citizens, we're not out to harm anyone. We just use these for home and personal protection and defense and maybe sport. I think we're concerned, and I can say this for everybody, that my gun rights can be taken away under this red flag law because of, as you stated, a mere suspicion. And what do I do in the 14 days or 2 months or 3 months if my home is burglarized?
That's right.
You know, what do I do? It's like, wait a minute now. Hey, I'm not the problem. I needed it to protect my family.
Right. So what happens if somebody makes that false allegation against you, right?
Due process wasn't given.
Right.
Okay.
So you've lost the due process, but do you have recourse against the person making the false allegation? What if we're neighbors and I just don't like you and I make a false statement and this gets tried and you win your rights back and then you sue me for what's called abuse of process? That is the recourse you have to me when I make a false statement against you under these new laws. You have abuse of process. But that is 6, 9 months, 12 months down the road, a year from now, 2 years from now maybe, and lots of legal fees and lots of lawyer fees.
Yeah.
The reality is that, if I get your gun rights taken away for 60 days and nothing bad happens in those 60 days to you, if nobody breaks into your house or no real harm comes to you, then you might be able to sue me for abuse of process, but you don't have a lot of damages because nothing really bad,
that's the that's what it looked like.
Out of that. I mean, you might be able to sue me for the attorney's fees and languish and things like that, but it's not going to be a big case. Now, if I get your gun rights taken away and something does bad happen to you, then maybe you have some recourse if the reason the gun rights were taken away was a false statement. But make no doubt about it, Facebook, these are coming next month. You're going to start seeing mid to late December, the governor's going to start talking about something called the Crime Commission.
That's correct, yes.
And the Crime Commission is going to start saying, these are the recommendations of what we think can pass constitutional muster. And as 1763 is written, it is super close to what the other states have said. And if the Democrats are smart on this one and they pass 1763 in a pretty close format to where it is, then it's going to be very hard for a court to intervene. You will have a gatekeeper, meaning the police department or the Commonwealth attorney has to get the protective order. So, the citizen can't go get it. And so you're going to have to convince a police department or a prosecutor that this needs to happen. And then they have to go to a special judge called the magistrate to get it issued. So you get 2 layers of protection for abuse. And then from there, you have a circuit court judge within 14 days. If that's how it comes down, I haven't found a single court case in the country that would find that is constitutionally invalid as far as what the Second Amendment, generally stands for. So it's a very, very dark time when it comes to these red flag laws because of the abuse. Now, obviously, if there's a crazy person out there with guns and somebody's able to intervene and disarm those people, the left will celebrate and point and say, look what we stopped, look what we saved, look how we intervened. But the laws have been on the books for multiple years, and as you said, it is marginal of the value that they can truly show of what these laws have done that actually stop or have prevented a mass shooting.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is why we're here. This is what, this is why these laws are coming on the books. It's for that issue. So take a, just watch that Facebook. 1763 or some derivative of it is coming down the pipe. You have any other thoughts on that, Mark?
Well, I was going to give our viewers a little background here that I got from our good friends at Wikipedia. The Virginia General Assembly voted down red flag legislation January 2019. Right. Okay, and after the Virginia Beach shooting, Governor Ralph Northam, of course, Democrat, called the Republican-controlled General Assembly at the time into a special session to consider gun control. The legislature did not vote on any gun legislation, but opted to refer the legislation to the State Crime Commission for study. The bill was scheduled to be taken up just about a week or so ago, with the special session in November after the November elections. But after the Democrats won control of the General Assembly in that election, Northam announced he would reintroduce the red flag law along with other gun control measures, saying he's convinced the majority now in the House and the Senate, they'll become law, and because of that, Virginia will be safer. Maybe not.
A lot of people are going to say this is the start of disarming society. This is the pretext of the beginning of the disarmament of the population. Yeah. For the police to be able to come in and take your guns for something that you haven't done yet is a scary concept.
That's true, yeah.
And we already have the options in the law to take your guns away with protective orders, with mental health commitment orders, with criminal charges. We already have those. And so it is going to cause a lot of conspiracy theory arguments that this is just about disarming the society. And in fact, especially when the police come and they're saying, we're here for your guns, and you can't stop them from taking them. You have to submit. There's no way to stop them. There's no emergency hearing with a judge where you can be able to instantly go and engage that. Juan asked a question here on Facebook. He said, will you be able to learn the identity of the complainant? Juan, unlike the impeachment proceedings of the president, you will get to know who made the allegation against you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that is going to be part of...
But don't do anything.
That will be part of... There will be a criminal complaint that will be filed. I'm assuming it's going to be similar to a protective order. When a protective order is issued, a criminal complaint is filed by a complainant, and that is part of the record. You will have access to that, assuming that they follow the standard ways that protective orders are currently issued. So I feel pretty good, Juan, that we're going to see you're going to be able to very readily know who made that allegation very quickly.
Okay.
Go ahead. You have anything else?
I think there's I don't want to see that day happen. I would be unnerved if by chance it happened to me, whatever the complaint may be. There's nothing we can do, but if you were to maybe giving advice to society, so to speak, and I'm at a loss of words. That's exactly what is going to happen. I'm fearing that day.
Well, I'll tell you what, Facebook. Here's the thing. You need to watch what you say.
Okay.
Okay. You need to watch what you say. You need to watch what you say on the comments of my videos. People are on here saying, we're going to go to war. We're going to revolt. We're going to do these things. These are public forums, and you need to be careful what you say on social media. One of the biggest things that social media has done is people have forgotten what it is like to be punched in the mouth. People think that they just have anonymity to be able to say whatever they want on social media and that there's no consequences and that there's no fear. You have got to be careful what you put out there, what you put on Twitter, what you put on Instagram, what you put on Facebook, what you say in writing, what you say by text message, because those words are going to be used against you. So keep your social media comments down to a minimum, and don't put threatening conduct online that can be used against you, right? The second thing that you can do is nobody really should know that you have guns. All right, you shouldn't really be talking about that.
That's right,
Keep that to yourself. There should be nobody who knows what guns you have, how many guns you have. Those are, keep these things more private to yourself. This will protect you from people coming in making false allegations. And so I would just encourage you to, the only real thing that you can do to really protect yourself is be careful what you post online. Be careful what you put out there. Everything you post, even if you delete it, that can be recovered by law enforcement. So if I put on here, I'm going to shoot up a school, and then I delete that 1 minute later, that can still be pulled up by law enforcement officers. So be careful of what you post online. Now, the real recourse to this is going to be aggressive civil lawsuits against people that take out false allegations. If somebody takes out a false allegation, the victim now is the person who lost their gun rights, and that victim needs to sue the tar out of these, out of the false accuser under abusive process, get a big judgment, have the media pay attention to it, and then that will curb people from abusing this, very dangerous thing. And speaking of that, the Supreme Court today just announced that the Remington case is going to be able to move forward. Now, let me talk to you about the Remington case. It's very interesting. So Sandy Hook, remember Sandy Hook?
Yes, we do, yes.
All right. So the Sandy Hook victims have sued Remington, who was the manufacturer of the AR-15 that was used in the school shooting. Now, many years ago, the Congress said that you can't sue a gun manufacturer for crimes that occur with guns. They're immune. But the Sandy Hook people are suing Remington under state law, saying that Remington has engaged in marketing efforts that have been deceptive and have recruited people that are unstable to want to own military types of weapons. Okay, that Remington has marketed their guns that, hey, our AR-15 is just as good as an M4 or an M16 or an A4, whatever it is. And so if you have one, you're asking me the question, I'm just answering it. That's amazing. You're asking me the same question. So let's talk about the Remington thing. So what they're doing is they are suing, Sandy Hook victims are suing Remington under Connecticut's Anti-Deceptive Practices Act, and is saying because of the marketing efforts of Remington, we should be able to sue them because they have recruited unstable people to want to own these types of firearms. Now, the Remington, balked at it. They brought it all the way up to the Supreme Court and said, you can't sue us, we're a gun manufacturer. And just today, the Supreme Court has rejected hearing the case, which means that the lower court case, who has said that you can sue Remington under this statute, stands. So Remington is going to get sued and is going to have to defend themselves in a Connecticut state court regarding whether their marketing efforts were deceptive. Now, what is that going to do to the gun marketplace? You are going to see manufacturers exiting the AR-15 business rapidly. You're going to see that happen in 2020. Colt has already done it. Colt is out. Remington barely makes any to begin with now anyway. Manufacturers are not going to want to build these guns because they're going to now be afraid that they're going to get sued under some state law and that the federal immunity protections are not going to apply to them. So you're going to see that lawsuit is going to do more to curbing AR-15 ownership than any law that's going to be passed, because the manufacturers aren't going to want to be, they're not going to be able to defend every lawsuit in every place where an AR-15 is used. That's where you're going to see it. That's where you're going to see the manufacturers start turning off production of these types of firearms. And that is how you're going to deal with red flag laws. When people abuse it, you sue them, you make noise when you're suing them, and then that'll cause other people to think, you know what, maybe I should only do this if it's really absolutely necessary, because if I don't, I just heard that, Tim Anderson got a judgment against this guy for $10 million, all right? And I don't want to get a judgment against me for $10 million, so I'm not going to do this unless it's really, really important.
Serious, yeah.
And that's what you're going to see happen on the AR-15 side because of what the Supreme Court did today. And what they did is just they didn't take the case. and that will reverberate amongst the legal community for and the gun manufacturing community for quite a while. So anyway,
January is right around the corner.
Things are changing.
Yeah.
Things are changing, and Facebook. I'm not trying to say whether I'm for or against red flag laws. I've tried to give you the pros and cons. I've let you think about it. This is not me condoning it. This is going to happen. It's as close to a fact as it can be. So gear up and watch it. And unlike what I talked about yesterday with the AR-15 ban, I think you're going to see less help from the courts in stopping this from happening. So we'll be here next week, Facebook, Tuesdays at 2 o'clock. Watch us live here, or you can watch us anytime on facebook.com/Virginia Law Office. I am Tim Anderson. Mark Rawlson is my co-host, bright guy who we've worked together for a long time. Feel free to ask your questions on Facebook. I'll respond to them in the future. And then we'll see you next week. I can promise we're probably going to be talking about guns. We're going to be talking about guns probably for the rest of the year, different components of what's coming down the pipe. See you next week, Facebook.
Appreciate it. Thanks.